Welcome to an episode of my series about GNU/Linux and Ethernet. In my last video, I've shown you how layer models works in general, and today it's time for a practical example. So today we will talk about the OSI model, which is a layer model for networks. So OSI stands for Open System Interconnect model, and on the left hand side you can see the 7 layers of the OSI model. We have a physical layer, data link layer, network layer, transport layer, session layer, presentation layer, and application layer. And now I will go from the bottom to the top through all 7 layers, and I want to highlight the most important details of each layer, and if I can also provide you some examples for the layers. Let's start with layer number 1, which is a physical layer. The physical layer is how you can transmit raw bits over a physical medium. But it's also giving you some bus management functions. For example, in the physical layer you can also detect collisions if 2 participants on a shared media wants to send at the same moment. The data representation here are bits, and under the physical layer you can find the definition for a lot of standards, like 10, 100 or 1000 base T or TX Ethernet, which is twisted pair Ethernet, like 100 base FX, which is fiber optical Ethernet, or at the right hand side we have 2 examples for single pair Ethernet. So in all these standards you can read how bits are represented on a physical medium. For example, you can see which voltage levels are used or which encodings are used to get digital bits to analog signals. And this is all what's inside these standards. Okay, the next layer is the data link layer, which pegs the data into frames. It's also adding some information to get a reliable transmission. For example, checksums, CRCs, and so on and so forth. The data representation here are frames. An example for the data link layer are raw Ethernet frames. In a raw Ethernet frame you have MAC addresses from the sender and the destination, and you also have a CRC included, so you can check if the received frame is matching with the CRC or if an error occurred during the receiving process. And switches are also layer 2 devices in the OSI model. The next layer is the network layer. The network layer is in charge of addressing packets and routing these packets through different networks. The data representation here is a packet, and examples are IPv4 and IPv6, for example. Then we have the transport layer at layer 4. The transport layer gives us an end-to-end communication between processes on different hosts. Examples here are ports in general or protocols like TCP and UDP. So for example, with TCP with TCP and UDP you get a kind of architecture, so a server-client architecture, and for TCP there is also a handshake which has to be done to establish the communication. The data representation here are segments or datagrams. The next layer is the session layer. So the session layer is in charge of establishing and managing of sessions between applications on different hosts. An example here would be SSH, and the data representation are data streams. The next layer is the presentation layer. So in here you have data transformation like encryption, compression, but also encoding. Examples here would be SSL or TLS, and the data representation is encoded and maybe also encrypted data. And last but not least we have the application layer, which is the interface to us human beings. So in the application layers you have services for users in a human readable form. Examples here would be HTML, mail, FTP, and so on and so forth. And the data representation here are user datas. Okay, so we went through all the 7 layers. In the next video I want to show you how an Ethernet transmission line is working, and I also want to tell you in which layer each part of the transmission line is. So I guess that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed the video and learned something. In case you want to support my work, you can buy me a coffee on buymeacoffee.com/channels for Linux. So thanks for watching and goodbye.